The Summer Hikaru Died, episode 4. So, in this one, Yoshiki and Nunuki are kind of like, and the Nunuki, I should say, the fake Hikaru, are kind of feeding this stray cat, and you can really just see the Nunuki really try to be more fitting in, be more human like he's learning the experience of like fitting a stray, something Hikaru has probably done, but now he's getting to experience that for the first time, his actual self. So yeah, I do love that in this like little brief moment with them, he does the Nunuki that is kind of points out that he doesn't know anything about his surroundings. He doesn't know things that are going on within his body, like how when he's excited, like this uh, stuff comes out of him, and all this other human-like qualities that he is getting to experience for the first time, and he doesn't really. He feels like a baby practically, right? Like he doesn't feels naive. He feels his own naivete, and he's glad that I'm sure he's glad that Yoshiki's there to help him. And despite all this, despite Yoshiki realizing that, man, things can go really bad with this person with this entity. As there's so many warning signs, like everything everything's kind of warning him not to get close, but he chooses to stay close to him regardless. Really interesting way to look at things, and it definitely seems like, for me at least, it seemed like the way that Yoshiki looks at him, and now it's seeming like in another point of view, it's almost seeming like this Nonoki is starting to become more human like, starting to blend in more, starting to realize how to maneuver being a human. And it's really thanks to Yoshiki that it keeps pointing things out to him. So it'll be interesting to see if that's kind of like where it leads off, where like, because he's not necessarily human, he takes full advantage of the human emotions that Yoshiki kind of is showing him, and the naivety that Yoshiki kind of has, and also Yoshiki's goodwill is being taken advantage of course. But then we cut back to the next day, and how these two girls were coming out from like their orchestra uh, performance or preparations for the summer festival, I should say, and they're like right near a railroad track, and this one girl kind of starts hearing like coming, 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 like almost like guiding for wait, like something's telling her to come to the rail tracks. So she points out to the other girl, "Hey, you know what? My two cents is telling me not to cross this railroad." And the girl's like, "Well, your two cents have been pretty spot on lately, so I think I'm gonna trust you," which we later find out at the end of the episode was probably the best thing that girl did this episode, because at the end of this episode we have this thing that's coming out of the rail tracks just yelling coming, coming, and it looks freakish. So this was a great save. um, and now we get in more into like Joshiki's family side of things, at least in this episode, as we see him, his sister, and his mother all in one home, but we don't really get to see the father so far. So like, I'm kind of wondering like what happened to the father as I'm going through this episode. And Yoshiki and the Noniki decided to take Yoshiki's sister up with them to the festival. And during as they're progressing, kind of enjoying the festival themselves, we have elders of the village kind of talking about this ritual that was supposed to take place, and that the Indo family, or Hikaru's family, it does every year to appease their own god of sorts. And that this time something probably went heavily wrong with it, and since there's the Indo family was the only one that knew how to do it and knew how to perform it, it's they're feeling like things something strange gonna keep happening to the village. Like they're like they've been saying, there's been like sightings of strange things occurring already, and we've seen throughout this anime that yes, the Nonoki being with Joshiki is causing a lot of the supernatural stuff to kind of make its way down the mountain as well, along with it. And it's been really nice lore dump that this episode had, where like the Indo family has been able to do this ritual for 300 years and has been able to keep whatever's like within the within the mountain or the Nonaki up in there, and keep all the evil spirits there that come along with it. But now that it's not visible to do the ritual anymore, they're kind of worried now, because the who they believe is Hikaru is too young to really attempt this sort of thing. And we do get even more knowledge, or like more world map view of the village, and that we learn that all the surrounding communities or surrounding towns, cities, whatever, have been, we're all essentially part of this big unity with it. But this one kind of separated itself from those, and in doing so, form its own religion, or like its own entity that they worship. Meanwhile, the rest of the places have tons of churches and stuff. And we learned that because the outsider that came in that's hunting the Nonaki kind of is telling them all this stuff, as we're seeing Yoshiki and the Nonaki kind of like go through the festival. And at one point, the Nonaki kind of hits this barrier that the guy created, and the guy instantly notices, because first of all, his hamster like makes some noise that he brought, and he also starts feeling a lot of pain, which we learned that whenever this barrier is created, he has to like give up an internal organ to make sure it's strong and intact. So this guy's a real brave warrior to be able to do that, as it's not like necessarily part of the agency's regulations. This is kind of going not against it, but this is kind of going on its own form of justice to get shit done in here. And basically, the Nonaki realizes that this barrier is kind of like in the way, and I don't know. It just seems like the Nonaki knows that it's not gonna be able to do whatever it wants now. And not only that, but it also like this barrier kind of like brought out its true form, so maybe it weakens his hold on Hikaru's actual body of sorts. And then we have the Nonaki reunite with Yoshiki, and they're there having ice cream, and it's just really interesting as the two kind of get to talking about the ice cream, and how Yoshiki says the syrup is the same, it's just the color dye that makes it taste so much different. And that's when the Nonaki asks, "How did you know that I wasn't the real Hikaru? Where was it because of was it because we're kind of like the syrup?" And he points out, "No, that's not necessarily why, but we learned that Yoshiki actually found Hikaru's body in the mountain it was as Hikaru passed." And yeah, no, it's really interesting that we get to see Yoshiki actually find Hikaru's body, because it kind of makes me remember the first episode and how he asks the Nonaki about like if it's not Hikaru. uh, and yeah, it makes me think a lot of about kind of the turmoil, or like the panic attack that Yoshiki had when he found the body, and then only to realize that the body that belonged to his best friend has now been taken over by an unknown entity, and something he himself has said that it can never is replace it, and can never replace him. And he actually breaks down this episode, as we see after the flashback of when he found it, that he actually misses Hikaru. And one of the reasons why he misses Hikaru is we we see him and Hikaru kind of like talking to one another at the lake, and they're talking about like how everybody's up in Yoshiki's family's business, which just and he talks about how his father and mother are always fighting, and this just lets me know that Yoshiki comes from like a broken family. His mother and father probably got a divorce, and he really felt so out of place. Not only because of probably because it seems he's at least bi, and also because there's no safe space. He feels like he's doesn't have any place to breathe because wherever he goes, he gets asked about his parents and what's going on with them. And then there's also the talk about his sister and how she doesn't go to school. So like he really felt like he was gonna suffocate. But then Hikaru tells him, "Listen, whenever you feel that way, just you can come over to my place." He gives Hikaru gave him that safe space to belong to, so that safe space for him to breathe, and that's something that you can see in Yoshiki's eyes that he doesn't take. He loved that part of Hikaru, that he finally found a place where he could breathe with Hikaru, but now it's definitely gone. And the Noriki points out to Hikaru a bit later, that even though he's never gonna be able to replace Hikaru, he will always be there to protect them from any danger, which is so really interesting to me. As we at the end of the episode, we get to see how Hikaru actually what actually happened to Hikaru in the mountain, and then Hikaru just slipped and hit his head so hard that he bled out. But as Hikaru was bleeding out, he asked Hikaru starts seeing like the Noriki come down, and he starts saying like he starts wondering like, oh, I can't leave Yoshiki alone. So he wanted any way to help Yoshiki, even in his dying breath. He asked the Noriki to like keep watch and stay close to Yoshiki, and yeah, no, great stuff from the Summer Hikaru Died. Probably one of the best anime currently airing. The storytelling is great. The animation is great. This was a bit low on the lower half compared to the previous 2 weeks because it's a lot of world building and a lot of backstories that probably will keep making the story more interesting moving forward. As now that we know that Yoshiki found the dead body, like what else is gonna keep occurring? And no, yeah, I'm so interested in more of this anime. Rating this episode a 8 out of 10.